The bad capacitor is the most common service call on an air conditioner these days. These things are just not made the way they used to be made. Here we have a brand new 45 by 5 microfarad MFD, plus or minus 5%. So if you get to the point where you're testing it, that's what you're looking at, those 45.5 numbers. Up on the top of this, we have Herm, which is what goes to your compressor. That starts your compressor. And we have C and fan. That starts your fan. So between fan and C, you should have the smaller number, which is 5. And between Herm and C, you should have the bigger number, 45. Now, a brand new capacitor should be flat on top right here. Sometimes they're bad and they're still flat, which is when you're going to need a meter to check it out. But it's pretty safe to say if the fan motor's running and the compressor's not, most of the time it's going to be the capacitor. And a lot of times people say it's running. Yeah, it's running, but they don't. I can tell immediately the fan motor's running when I walk up on one and the compressor's not, because you can hear that twang like a refrigerator down underneath the secondary motor. Now here's the same exact capacitor, a 45 by 5. Even though it doesn't look the same as that one, it's the same size. You go by the numbers. And that one, you don't even have to get a meter out, because if it's not completely flat on top, you open your electrical compartment, which you'll see later on in this video, and you will see where this is located. There's usually 2 screws to pull off that cover. You're going to want to make sure you kill the power at the disconnect. The gray box hanging on the side of the house, usually got a pull out on it before you open that up so you don't get electrocuted when you're monkeying around in there. So let's show you how to check one of these if it comes to that. For the most part, this is going to get your unit running, but you still don't know if you have a refrigerant problem, which is the benefit of having someone like me come out and replace it for you. Then I can check the refrigerant. Like the one you're going to see later in this video was actually 3/4 of a pound low. Now, was that enough to cause a freeze up when it was cooler at night? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's been 3/4 of a pound low for its 22-year life here, and the problem is the wire was burned off on the Herm, the one that went to the compressor. Now what caused that? Probably just corrosion from the obvious mice that have been living in there at some point. Somebody probably cleaned it out and didn't clean up the wires. It corrodes the little prongs that go on here. So you want to make sure you got tight connections. You know, pinch your little spade connectors so they grip and they're not going up and down on there loose, because if that's loose, that'll cause arcing, and that's probably what happened with the wire on the one in this video you're going to see. It just probably got corroded and loosened up, and then it started arcing and burned off. So you want to make sure all your wires are tight in there. Now let's show you how to check this if you get to the point where you want to check it with a meter. That is capacitance right there, which is UF, and you just take and go between Herm and C, and you should get that bigger number, plus or minus 5%. We're getting 44.9 UF on that one. And then between C and fan, we should get the smaller number, which is 5. And we're exactly 5. So we know that's how you check your capacitor. And you want to discharge, if you're pulling it out of the unit, you want to discharge with a screwdriver between C and Herm and C and fan. Obviously not touching the metal part of the screwdriver when you do that to discharge this if you're going to test it and not just replace it. So that's the breakdown of this whole deal. Now you'll see me, you didn't see me hose off the condenser coil on this job, but I did that because it was plugged with cottonwood when I got there, so always keep an eye, especially if you have those louvers on the condenser outside. You don't know, out of sight, out of mind. You want to make sure the coil is clean, because that will not work properly. And your air filter in the furnace, obviously, those are the two most important things. First thing I do on a service call, walk in the house, check the air filter in the basement. And if that all looks good, I look at the metering device outside, because I'm always going to, or I mean inside in the basement, because I'm always going to check refrigerant level after I do a capacitor to make sure that didn't have something to do with the problem in the beginning, you know. This particular job, I looked at the thermostat on the way in. It had a low battery light. He's like, I just replaced them. So I pulled them out, checked them. They were bad batteries. So we got the thermostat batteries replaced with some fresh ones. Turned it on. Always make sure your fan is running at the furnace, because it's not going to work without that. So once the fan comes on, you go outside and make sure it's running, and then you'll know how to check a capacitor now and how to get to it. I walked up on this thing and I could hear the compressor trying to start. Fan was running. That's a distinct bad capacitor call. But then when I looked in here, the orange wire was burnt off of this rusty old capacitor. So whether it's good or bad, I'm going to replace it. Went to the truck and got one. You want to make sure you disconnect the power. Go into the unit before you open this up. And that's what we're looking at. Okay, so when I got here, I looked up under the fins. The coil was semi-plugged, so I hosed that off before I did anything. We are going to plug this in now, and you should hear both motors start. The fan motor right in there, and then the twang of the compressor down in there. And that sounds a lot better. So if you don't hear that second motor down in the bottom, you come out here and the fan's running, you could have a bad capacitor. Now we're going to check the refrigerant and get out of here. I always look at refrigerant charge on these capacitor calls, because so many times it's low to the point where that might have been the problem that caused the capacitor to go bad. If it's low on refrigerant, it'll freeze up, and then the amps on the compressor will go up. We had that wire burned off here, so I'm not sure what caused that. It looked like we had mouse in there at one point, probably corroded the wires. You don't want to cover these things, that'll corrode the electrical components in there. But anyway, what we're looking for is that 80-degree pink temperature is what we go by when we got our TXV here. And we got our TXV, so we should, on our line temperature down here, we should be 10 degrees roughly below that pink number when we have our 410A system.